Hey, everybody. Are we live and good to go here? Yeah, it looks like we are. Hey, everybody, live from Denver. It is Friday night. Hey, critics. How y'all doing out there?
Hello, hello.
I am joined by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
And we are here for another bodacious episode. With no rigmarole or shenanigans or faldy-roll of any kind. And this is all based on a meme I posted on Twitter a couple days ago. Bunch of words I want to bring back. We are back. Okay, guys. Hey, everybody. This is our second week, our first full week here in our new home, our new apartment here in Denver. And yeah, we are here. What did I want to say? Let me turn that off. About this exactly. Is that we did not, because I am basically had too many things on my mind, I did not set up the 7 cam. But don't kill me.
However,
we are going to force the little rat in here because, in fact, he's right there. So we didn't even have to force anything. But he is the most camera-averse cat on the planet, as far as I can tell.
Hi, buddy.
There he is, our little bundle of furry love, 7 the Wonder
there
Cat.
he goes.
Making it, there he goes, exactly, like he is wont to do when we are shooting. So yeah, that's the 7 you're gonna get this week, guys. Sorry we didn't have the 7 cam set up, but we did drag him in here for your sick pleasure. Yes, his cameo. That's exactly right.
Yes.
Yeah, we do love our 7. Okay, yeah. Hey, Henny. Hey, everybody. We are wow, Denmark. Hey, man. Okay, we are doing well. We have finally. It was midweek that we finished actually getting all the things over here. I think it was only a couple days ago. And that is now finally done. We are totally out of the other place and totally into this one. So I've spent like most of a lot of time setting up in here and stuff. I put another light up. I think it's a little lighter in here. I've still got a ton of setup to do. I want to get some sounding and stuff like that in here and make it, more pro or whatever. But I like our little setup here, and I think we'll kind of stick with how we're doing this. Gives us a little bit more room in the room if I don't have a bookshelf behind me. That's why that's gone away and the wall is closer to us here. But otherwise, it's the same as what we had before. And we are very, 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 very happy in our new location. It's actually closer to a lot of stuff. Restaurants, fun stuff. We're just kind of starting reopening a little bit in Colorado, just barely. I mean, it's half capacity. Obviously, mask intensive and, follow safety protocols, which we're doing. But there's places all over near here, really close by. So we're very, very happy about that, too. Good location. Okay. Yes, I got some fun stuff. My collections. Okay. So, hey, NC. All right. I have two from North Carolina, I think. Awesome stuff. I love our reach. I love what we're doing with this show. I wanted to share a couple news items with you guys I thought you might enjoy hearing about. This is, after all, the show where we get to kind of let our hair down.
Yeah.
And just have fun with you guys and just talk. By the way, call-in line, 984-214-4154. We had some excellent calls last week, and I hope we have some this week. But let me give you some news items because they're fun. First one, and I'm actually very excited about this, is this week, I think I can say that I'll just say indirectly that I recorded a podcast with a certain pair of someones, and it was a lot of fun. And I have no idea when you guys will be hearing that, but I will let you know as soon as I know. So that is out there, and it was so much fun that I might end up, in fact, we're pretty sure that there will be a part 2 with pair of said podcasters. shortly thereafter. So I think that's going to be fun, and I think you guys will enjoy what we talk about. And I'm really looking forward to doing a part 2, actually, because we're going to get into some stuff that's really kind of dark that I want to get into on the Scientology side of things. Okay. Okay, good. We will get to some of this. Thank you for that question, Maverick. That's interesting. How exactly do I explain to my brother and parents what biases and fallacies are? You could think of them as, well, Debbie, I may be referring to that pair, and that might be what I'm saying. Yeah, not Ross and Carrie. Not this time. Although I would love to participate again with Ross and Carrie. They are so much fun. Okay, so explaining biases and fallacies. I explain them by saying that biases are like filters that we wear over our eyes that change how we perceive the world or how we perceive what we are perceiving. It literally changes it before we are, as we're processing the information. And fallacies are basically wrong ways that we think. They're errors in our thinking, is really in a logical progression of here's the right, reasonable answer. These are the errors or mistakes that we make getting there. And it can prevent us from getting there. Those errors can be so big. And so what people did is they said, okay, well, what are the kinds of thinking that people engage in, or what are the kind of mistakes people make in their thinking or in their arguing? And that's what fallacies are. And I got a whole plain deck of them here. Okay. So that's the easiest way I can think of to explain those. I hope that helps. So, okay, so that podcast happened. And or is happening. Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you guys is something that came out of the move. I debated on this one because it's a little embarrassing, and I'm not going to share any of the real details of this with you, but I am going to share that this happened. I found in our move, you know how when you move, you got to move all your stuff. And all your spouse's stuff, too. And you rediscover stuff that you just forgot you had. I mean, you remember it, but you just haven't seen it in a long time, right? And that's what these 2 little notebooks are, is something I found. I dug up, and I'd forgotten I had these. These are the only things, the actual physical things that I still own from the RPF, from the time that I was in the Sea Org and I did the Rehabilitation Project Force. I kept these, and I'm going to tell you a little story about these, what they are. And like I said, it's a little embarrassing because I do not consider myself an artistically creative person. I do consider myself artistic as far as fiction story writing goes. I do have an imagination in that direction, but when it comes to music or art, painting, drawing, stuff like that, I've really tried. I've studied, and I'm just not very good.
I'm the same way. I can't draw to save my life.
Yeah.
My sister can. She's great at it, but...
Yeah, and she also does origami and stuff.
Yeah, origami, and she knits, and she does other little crafts. She likes that stuff.
Yeah, kind of creative.
Yeah.
Well, I like to think of myself as a creative person, and I certainly do love imagination and imaginative stuff. But what I'm saying is I lack skills in certain areas where I kind of wish I had skills, but... you kind of realize at a certain point in your life, that's just not who you are or what you're going to do. And that's kind of me with music, okay? But what happened is one of the things that, okay, there's two things here, that there's a good and a bad, I guess you could say, with the RPF. And what's in here, I'll do the spoiler. What's in here are 76 or so. I don't know if it's 76. About that. It's a lot. There's a lot here. There's songs that I wrote. It's just the words. I had the idea of what the music could be in my head at the time, I wrote these, 15 years ago, 14 years ago. I don't remember. I made little notes about what music I was thinking of in terms of, kind of what music might have a relationship to the words, so that I would remember at least that much, because I can't write music. I don't really read it. I understand music theory, from Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I understand 8 notes and the bars and stuff, but I don't read it. I don't play it. I tried to do the keyboard thing, didn't work out. So I'm totally fine on the fact that these are never going to be produced or anything, but I thought you guys might find it interesting that I did this. And I did this because on the RPF, you have 0 entertainment. And by 0, I mean none. 0. Zilch. There is none. So you have to make do. You have to make stuff up. You gotta just work it out. You gotta entertain yourself, or we entertained each other, and not never anything as formal as a show or a staged thing or anything. We were never given that kind of latitude. You're not there to be entertained. It is the point. Mm-hmm. So you're not there to have fun. So if you're having fun, you're actually doing it wrong. But people are people, and they're going to make the best out of any bad situation. And they're going to bring humor, and they're going to try to lighten it up. And we, of course, did that, when we were on the RPF. So the only real entertainment that we had was the films that L. Ron Hubbard had made, or that Scientology had produced, for showing how to do the auditing and how to do the communication stuff in Scientology, in order to how to do the auditing sessions, how to do the counseling. There are films that they train you with to show you what good auditing looks and sounds like. And there are jokes and things interspersed in the script, and some of them are funnier than others, and there's music, and they're full-on productions. And they're privately produced in-house productions. And many of them star Scientology celebrities even. Mostly the D-list guys, by the way, the highest class. Isaac Hayes was in one of them. Jason Begay was in a couple. I'm pretty sure they've remade those films now. They had a tendency to have to do that because people would get declared suppressive, and then they couldn't really keep showing those films. Anyway, so those films were basically...
Did Isaac Hayes get declared? I thought
No, he did not. He just died.
Okay.
No, that
Until
film's
he
still
died.
okay.
Yeah.
But Jason Begay is definitely declared, and he's a big bad guy. He's the guy on Chicago PD.
Okay.
He was in a couple of tech films, and he was good in them. I mean, they acted, they're actors anyway. So yeah, we would watch these films because they were literally the only things we could watch that had any entertainment value really whatsoever. It was that. The other thing we could watch that had any entertainment value were the Scientology PSAs, the public service announcements about like the 21 precepts of the way to happiness. They made PSAs for each one of them. You can Google this stuff and find it. There's a DVD they produced that has all the PSAs on them. And they're little funny musical snippets of an entertaining minute or two that highlights a particular precept from the way to happiness, from take care of yourself, take care of your body, to keep a clean space. And it shows these. It's actually they're actually entertaining. I mean, the one with the take care of your space or keep a clean house is 3 college kids sitting on the porch of a house that is a total disaster.
Because they're college kids.
That's right. And these 3 girls walk by, and they're like sticking their noses up at what a dump this place is. And this one guy goes, I'm sick of this. And he gets the other 2 guys, and they go and do this day-long scrub fest and throw everything out and clean everything up. And it's a cute little 1-minute PSA about this, taking care of your environment and stuff. That was our entertainment on the RPF. So for 3 years of my life, that was the best I could hope for, okay? That's what I'm trying to get across. I'm pimping these PSAs as though they're really amazing, but I'm just telling you the position they had in my life for 3 years, okay?
Yeah, your entertainment was condescending.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so easy. If a hot girl walks by and tells you your house is messy, you're going to suddenly be a clean person.
Exactly. So... Anyway, so that was my life, right? And I can laugh about it now in retrospect because it was awful. There's no other word for it, but you gotta laugh, right? And at the time, this was how we found our outlet for that sort of thing. And one day, I'm big on playing songs in my head and recalling things from the past, and I'm pretty good at it, especially when it comes to songs and movies. I've got tons of song lyrics in my head, she can tell you. Mm-hmm. And I remember movies pretty well, and I remembered them even better back then. I've always been a cinephile, always loved movies. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways I would entertain my other unit members when we were up scrubbing showers or digging ditches or whatever it was we were doing is I would tell a movie to them because they hadn't seen it.
Oh, wow.
And I would basically play by play, line by line, like walk through the movie. And I wouldn't get every ounce of dialogue, but I would get all the significant scenes and what the whole thing was and walk them through the movies. And we went to the movies all the time on my dime, and others, we would trade off. Others would do it too. And it was a way to work on my storytelling a little bit, but it was also just kind of a way to relieve the pressure and stress of where we were and what we were doing and what we were forced to be doing. And it was an outlet. And right after, or around that time, I started inventing songs. They just started coming, and I started thinking them through, and I would sort of play them in my head. And after a while, after one or two of these had kind of developed, I realized maybe I should write these down. Maybe these aren't that bad, And I started doing that, and then I started creating more of them until I basically burned out. After I wrote 2 notebooks worth of these things. And like I said, I'm not opening these. You're not ever going to see these, but they are awful. I have since looked at them, and I am keeping them only for posterity. That's how that works. Okay. So, Shot by Shot, Young Frankenstein. I wish I had seen Young Frankenstein enough times to be able to remember that one. I only saw it when I was like 6 or 7.
I've seen it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I only saw it once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's actually a movie I want to see again.
Yeah, it's a good movie. But it's been so long.
Oh, excuse me.
Could definitely not do a shot by shot.
No.
I remember little pieces here and there.
There's a few movies I could do that with today. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the movie I've seen more times than any other movie. I think I have seen it in the theater 17 or 18 different times.
Wow.
I obsessed that movie when I was a teenager.
I don't know if I could do a full shot by shot, but I could probably do a good amount of the 1989 Batman, and I could probably do a good amount of the Interview with the Vampire movie.
Yeah.
Because those are the 2 movies I watched so much when I was a kid.
Nice. Yeah, Raiders, all the Star Wars movies, all the Star Trek movies. At least the ones with the original crew, not the next generation stuff. Let's see. I could do Matrix. I couldn't do the other 2 Matrix movies, but I could do Matrix shot by shot, I think. Yeah, anyway, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Clockwork Orange.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Really? Damn, girl. I'd
love to someone explain that shot by shot and see what their
that's wow
interpretation of it was.
Okay. Yeah, definitely Star Wars. Okay, so good times. All right, let's talk about ethics and morals. I themed the show this week on ethics and morals, and I want to say again, there's no calls in the queue right now. Call in line 984-214-4154. I am interested, Blade Runner. Yeah, I couldn't do shot by shot, but I could break the story down for sure. I could tell you the whole story beginning to end, absolutely. What was I saying? These themes, these things I put out are really just kind of a kick to get the show going. I don't intend to talk for an hour about ethics and morals. I certainly can. And I know you can certainly contribute.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear from you guys too. Okay, so just putting that out there. This is a call-in show, and I love talking to you guys. My parents would not let me see Clockwork Orange as a kid. That one was actually one they put the kibosh on. And given my imagination as a kid, I'm glad they did, because after I have seen it, and woo.
Well, I read it in high school, and then I saw it in college, I think is how it went. But I read the whole thing in high school. I liked the book.
Wow, I never read it.
Yeah, it's hard to read. It takes you a while to get used to the way he changes the language, and
That's why I avoided it, because I heard you practically had to have a glossary to be able to.
well, in the copy that I had, there was one in the back. There was a glossary, so it helped. And then once you got used to it, it was really easy. But that was when I was in high school and had a spongy brain, so.
Can you recite every line from Top Gun? God, I hope not. Jesus. Okay. But let's talk about ethics and morals for a minute, because this is something we actually just studied in class. And I thought, this is a kind of an evergreen subject for sure. And it was interesting studying it at the master's level and seeing what is and isn't there, and what is not there in the realm of ethics and morality are definitive hard answers. To almost any aspect of it. What there are is a lot of analysis, a lot of looking, a lot of talking about, a lot of examining, categorizing, and labeling. There's a lot of that. And it's interesting. It's a very interesting subject. I found all the things about ethics and morals that I've ever really considered important or thought about part of the lecture where we covered this stuff, and we talked about it then, contextualizing it in criminality, because of course that's the kind of bent that this program is going on with coercive control. So we talked about how criminals, do criminals have a moral code? Do they have ethics? Well, yes, of course they do. At least as far as I'm concerned, they do. I don't think they're soulless, mindless automatons. And if you're a human being, you have values, and you have a value set that you could define. And the interesting thing for me, and what I wanted to talk about with you guys tonight, is ethics and morals, I think, are so... man, what's the word? I don't want to say relative. It's too broad. I don't want to say... I want to say context specific. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Because,
well, and they're subjective to the person, place, time.
That's what I mean, right? The context kind of determines it. Because how can you judge on an absolute or objective level whether an act or a deed or a thing or a person is always, under all circumstances, X or Y, good or bad, right? How can you do that? Because in a living world of organic random chaos that is our world, situations change.
Right. It's like with one of the biggest moral questions about murder is like, well, that's not always, it's sometimes it's understandable, even though we all go, that's wrong. It's like, well, is it always?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now hold that thought, because Travis is calling in, and we're going to take his call. All right. Here we are. Hello, Travis. You on?
Hey, Chris. It's good to talk to you, and your wonderful wife, Melissa, as well.
Hello. Thank you.
Hi. Glad you're here.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I was looking at some of the WikiLeaks files that are online for Scientology, and I noticed that there were two documents. Both of them were called sales pattern. There was a 1 edition and a 2 edition. Yes. Did you ever run across that in your... Okay, good. So I'll hang up and listen to your explanation about that, because I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. It said something about a tiger in a cage. The first one did, and I needed to imagine myself close to the cage and then part of the cage, and I'm like, this is too nuts even for me. So I'll hang up and listen to your answer, okay?
All right, cool, man. Okay, so sales patterns in Scientology. Scientology is a money-making scam, as we have said many times. That is the reductio ad absurdum of Scientology. And that means that they have to have a method or means of getting the money in. And that makes Scientology primarily a sales organization, right? Which it is. A ton of their concentration of their time and effort and attention is on getting money. They staticize it. They keep track of it to the penny. Every organization, every week, reports how much their income was, gross and net, etc. Oh, by the way, thank you very much for that super chat.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And appreciated your comment there about Socrates. Socrates, he's my man.
Socrates.
And Xi and I will address your question on there because ethics and morals as Hubbard defined them, we will get to that if we can. And what do I want to say right now? I don't really have an argument with how he defined those two or differentiated ethics and morals and the definitions of them in the context he laid them out in Scientology. Of course, I have every problem with the fact that Hubbard then proceeded to not follow those ideas in putting a justice system together that, persecutes Scientologists. So one does not follow the other, right? The basics of ethics and justice and morality in Scientology theoretically sounds okay, but so does greatest good for greatest number until you watch it be executed in the world of Scientology. So I always have to kind of put those disclaimers and things down there because it's important to me that I not be misunderstood in validating anything Hubbard had to say. Okay, now as far as sales patterns go, jumping back to that, and then I'll ignore the comments so I don't get distracted again. The simple, easy sales pattern for all staff, all events in Scientology is cash or credit card. It's a double bind, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
We just did a whole podcast for this week, which you guys will see tomorrow, on the subject of double binds, psychological phenomena, communication phenomenon. We talk all about it. Yep. That was fun.
It was.
So cash or credit is a double bind because it doesn't ask you if you want it. It assumes you want it.
Yeah.
And it simply asks you, how are you going to pay for it? And you're left sitting there going, wait a minute, did I even want it? Well, we're not even asking you if you want it, right? It just assumes you're buying. And this was drilled into us. We were told explicitly that's why you are asking these two questions. You're bypassing their choice. You're bypassing their bank, right? You're bypassing all of their reasons not to buy. And we were told as the sales force that any reason they have for not buying comes straight out of their reactive mind. So we should ignore it. It doesn't matter. The greatest good, the ethical decision in Scientology is if there's a choice between buying it or not buying it, the ethical choice is buying it. If it's a choice of doing Scientology tonight or not doing Scientology tonight, you do Scientology. You come to course. You go in session, whatever you're going to do. That's the ethics and morals of Scientology. And so there were there were levels of salespeople. And so the higher up the levels of salespeople you would go, in other words, the more talented or ruthless salespeople would get more advanced training. And that's where some of these sales patterns would come in. And they would be given direction in these sales patterns of what not to say or analogies to give. I think like that tiger you were talking about, Travis, I believe if I'm remembering right, that was a like some kind of an analogy to make. And Hubbard offered many of these in his materials even. There was an issue he wrote called 76. Was it 76 or 112 or something? For some reason, 76 is always a number that sticks in my mind with Scientology. Probably because of the 76 million years ago that we all died or whatever. Anyway, there was some number of these, but there were a number of sales arguments for why people should train in Scientology. And these were things we had to memorize as registrars, as salespeople. And I, of course, can't remember any of them now. Stuff like, but training is for life. It's not just to learn how to audit. You're going to use it with your family and your friends, and you're going to use all this Scientology information. And so you would learn these little tips or advices or sales tips that would help to get the sale and help get the money in. So that's what that is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you got that right, Christina. It was pretty abusive. Okay. So we have another call.
Oh,
Here we go. Hello, you are on.
Hey, Chris, Melissa, how you guys doing?
good, good.
Good. Nick?
Wonderful. Glad you guys got a new house. So I'm going to go over a couple of quick bullet points regarding ethics, and then I'll let you give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, hit
First
me.
of all, I'm wondering kind of how we create a unified code of ethics that everyone can agree on, considering the country has become so divisive. Some might say the Ten Commandments, but that thing existed long before the criminally minded Abrahamic deity came to existence. Secondly, how do we talk about ethics without being preachy? Because I'm finding that if I use understanding, curiosity, and questions, kind of like a therapist, most people are kind of open to that. But still, I think there's a real lack of trust, especially on social media, where everybody seems to be lecturing, but nobody's actually curious about anything.
Yes.
Thirdly, ethics through living by example. I think that atheism is definitely something valuable. I really feel bad for the fact that in the early 2000s, a lot of nihilists calling themselves atheists kind of screwed it up for atheism in general, because you know what they did to Sam Harris and other people such as Sam Harris, who actually had a lot of good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, how does, as far as conquering the criminal consciousness versus exposing it. Now, when I talk about the criminal consciousness, as I've mentioned in another call that I made with you guys, and I'm going to be kind of, I'm going to go down that dark path. I kind of, at some point, I got to kind of wonder at what point does someone's criminality excuse them from being human? Because you'd consider people like Stalin, Hitler, Mao Zedong, maybe even David Miscavige as having abandoned their humanity. Now, when I talk about humanity, I'm talking about people who love, revere, and want to preserve life in general, whereas my studies of what the criminal actually is, the criminal fears both death and life, but at the same time, it resents the fact that other people even exist. So I know that's kind of like, really down that dark path, because that idea can be taken way too far.
Well, for sure.
What's your thoughts on those four things?
Yeah, wow. Well, there's, here's War and Peace summarized. What do you think?
A lot, I know.
Why don't we, you hit a lot of stuff there, and I have thoughts on each one of them. So why don't we, if you could help walk me through these, let's start with what do you want to take up first?
Well, as far as creating a unified code of ethics, and that kind of goes along with discussing with people ethics and ways of preserving and encouraging life and health and et cetera. Because what I see on social media, I see a lot, and I slip into it too at times. I'll scroll through TikTok or social media, you see these people making statements, making opinions, or having problems, and you try to offer a little bit of advice. And if you're not careful, you kind of start to sound preachy. But it's like, if you ask questions, if you try to really get to the underlying root of it, you can kind of, you say something and hope they might take it to heart. You hope it might help them. But a lot of people on all sides, kind of like the more radical, what's the phrase? Those who are ideological zealots regarding any specific belief set, whether it's conservatism or feminism or atheism or, really in much of anything. Mm-hmm. There's this issue where the idea possesses them. It's like they're not even, they're just, it's almost like they're a host for the idea.
Well, that's what we are all about when we talk about extremism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Is exactly that. You become obsessive on this idea because you're so far down the scale that you're losing your critical thinking abilities and objectivity. And as far as the question of a universal code of ethics, there isn't one, and I doubt that there ever will be one. I've pretty much, I think I've said before, it's kind of, it sounds a little bit like a joke, but I think it's absolutely true, that there is not any one thing that every human being is ever going to agree on. So the idea of a high level concept like ethics being something everybody's going to get on the same page about, just forget it, right? Nor could they.
Yeah.
It's not even a matter of should they, it's how could they. Every area of the world is different. I mean, geographically, they're different. Temperature-wise, they're different. Like these variations alone create changes in moral codes, much less language, culture, history. You know what I mean?
Religion.
Oh God! And then you throw religion into the mix.
Every religion has slightly different ideas about what's right and wrong. So.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and I understand that, but I'm kind of like, and maybe this is me being a little bit of a zealot, but in my view, the reverence and preservation and success of human life, not only as individuals, but as a species, to me is something that's extremely important. Regardless of whether there's something in life after, whether there's something beyond, this existence, it doesn't really matter. What matters is how we live our lives now. And the thing of it is that I see, especially with social media, which I'm trying to, keep away from because, it's so negative lately, is that it seems to be this overwhelming criminal consciousness of, and I've mentioned the 9 traits of the dark personality, the sadism, narcissism, greed, etc. People are so obsessed with this scarcity mindset, even though most people are living in abundance, especially here in America.
That's right.
We have, just being able to walk to my refrigerator or turn on the air conditioner or have hot and cold running water or being able to turn on a light. Those are luxuries to 90% of the people living on this planet.
That's right.
And Americans, for some reason, can't freaking comprehend that. And it amazes me.
It's part of our cultural indoctrination, obviously, because you're absolutely right. Yep. We have a travel problem. We have an international awareness problem, right? By travel problem, I mean, I think, what is it? 10% of us have passports or 15% of us or something?
It's not a very big number, whatever it was.
It's not a very big number. Yeah. And a lot of people are not traveling internationally. And I just throw that out there as a silly but very true thing that reduces our focus to the here and now and only us. And America's also blessed and cursed with being a very large territory. It's not a little state like in Europe where you got all these little tiny places. It's big. You could spend your whole life running around on this continent and not go anywhere else and be very happy and very entertained. So,
we got a lot of different cultures in one place.
So we're geographically challenged to overcome that problem is kind of my point.
Yeah. I recently met a woman and, I'm very much in love with her. She's actually in Serbia. And as an American, it was like, I had this idea of, Serbia and these other, Southern European countries, they must be like, war zones and et cetera and blah, 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 right? And I'm just like, I get on the internet and I'm like, oh, wait, no, Belgrade is one of the most beautiful cities that I've ever seen. It's like, but see, that's my own American bias, own ignorance coming to bite me in the butt. And it's like, well, okay, I'm open enough to learning and understanding, but what I'm concerned about is, especially here in America with all this zealotry, is that people are so closed off to learning anything. And then you add to that the criminal consciousness, which wants to tell people that they're in this desperate fight for survival of war of all against all, of might makes right. And it's just like, holy cow, they're creating their own damn problems.
That's
you
right.
know?
That's right. You and I are on exactly the same page on what you're saying right now. I see exactly what you're talking about.
And I realize that I'm very neurodivergent, and I realize that you're an atheist. I'm not an atheist, but at the same time, I see the benefits in atheism, where we really need to just focus on physical reality, to kind of, as human beings, to kind of get our shit together so that we can succeed as a species. I mean, there's like meteorites and asteroids that would solve a lot of like mineral problems. I mean, you've got like little African children digging for lithium in horrific conditions. We could just go out and grab a rock from space and solve that problem, but they won't do that because so much of our political class, corporate class, etc., is being run by the criminally minded.
That's right.
And that brings me to another major point, which is, what do we do with these? I mean, it's every time I think about criminals, I want to cuss. It's like, what do we do with these damn criminals? Because it's like, we can't just, we're trying to be good. We're trying to play by the rules. We're trying to abide by the laws. But at some point, I got to kind of wonder, is it that just people just don't understand what a criminal actually is, what the criminal consciousness is? Is it that they're so unaware of themselves and their workings of their own mind that they don't really understand it? Because the thing of it is,
I'm nodding to all of this right now, just so you know, because all of these things you're saying or asking are true. There is a very low awareness of what criminality actually is versus what you see in cop shows. There's a very low awareness of ourselves. I mean, why do you think self-help and yoga and all this crap is such a burgeoning field of woo and money? Is because people are desperate for answers and they want simple ones, and the truth is that it's not simple. And you got to do some study,
And I've tried to talk to people about what criminals are, and they go, "Oh, well, it's sin," and I'm like, "No, it's not sin.
Right.
Sin is disobedience to God." Right. But if you read the Bible, God Himself is a criminal, and I mean, like in any mythology that you read, most of these entities, 99% of them, if you look at it from a human perspective of dark personality traits, they're just straight up criminal. And it's like, well, I'm a human being. I'm better. I mean, even when I was a little kid, it's like I read the Bible and I was like, I think 9 years old, I realized, oh, wait, I'm more ethical than God. Why should I worship this damn thing? And it's like, we've got to, we as human beings, as individuals, we need to have value in ourselves, love ourselves, but also be able to get rid of that insecurity, because that insecurity, that ignorance is what actually leads to criminality. So I think some criminals can probably be redeemed.
Oh, I think most of them can.
Criminals.
Oh, yeah. I think most of them can.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you look at certain criminals like serial killers, pedophiles, a lot of those types, I mean, they've abandoned their humanity. And I know that sounds kind of crazy.
Well, maybe it's more accurate to say that they... I think it might be a little more accurate and maybe more useful to say that they are challenged in tolerance, empathy, and compassion. Which obviously are the components of what we think of as humanity, but I think it's more useful and helpful to break it down that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that does stem from childhood, because if you study narcissism and codependency and a lot of that stuff, it really starts in childhood. Because I remember watching an interview with Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about a couple of little kids that he interacted with, and I guess he was like talking about some 2-year-old who was just a little monster, and was he said basically, there's a certain point at which a child is supposed to kind of learn to obey the rules to a certain degree, understand the rules, learn the rules, because only until you understand them can you break them. But the thing of it is like, with severe trauma to the young mind, the mind cannot develop correctly. And then you're going to have somebody who they don't know how to be anything other than a criminal. And I would say that the way we prevent criminality is by treating children better. But then you look at all these things happening with child abuse, sex trafficking, human trafficking, just child labor. I mean, the way we treat our children is it's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally insane.
It is literally that, and literally criminal.
Oh yeah.
And let me look. I think we're definitely on the same page on all of this stuff. And you are clearly studied on this. You have definitely gone down some rabbit holes and been pursuing knowledge on this. Well,
I'm self-taught, but I mean, you've got.
Hey, no, you're doing fine.
My hat's off to you, man.
Yeah, no, you're good. And up until 5 months ago, so was I. So who am I?
Yeah.
But let me throw something at you that I think you might find interesting that I have just been hitting on like last 24 hours. And in fact, our podcast this week it mentions some of this. And this is a guy named George Batson. You heard of him?
No. How do you spell the last name?
Oh, it's let me look him up for you real fast. And I do see we have another call in the queue, so we are going to wrap this up. But let me Batson, is it Batson like that? No, it's not that. Bateson. Okay. 1 second. Double bind. Yes. Oh, sorry. Gregory Bateson. Bateson. Gregory Bateson. I just became familiar with this man myself in the last 24 hours, and he is the one who originated the concept of the double bind in communications and psychology. Mm. And he had a ton of other things to talk about with society and relationships. Mm-hmm. And I think that, a lot of what you're describing goes into the world of these double binds, which I'm going to ask you to watch my podcast tomorrow with Mel here. And then let me know maybe after you watch that and check out some of Gregory Bateson's stuff. Get back to me and let me know what you're thinking, because the problem with the framing of the problems that we're talking about tonight in this phone call have a lot to do with the double binds of society, the way society is structured, that it has to be this way, but it also contradictorily has to be this way. And these two things don't solve. They just create a problem that just persists, and it just goes on and on and on. And we're all going a little psychotic because of it. For example, one example is we have to deal with climate change, and we have to deal with inequality in society by raising the poor up, by creating more resources, creating more opportunity, creating zones of opportunity rather than sucking all the opportunity out of them. Yet, in order to solve that problem, we have to build up society and build up the resources. And what does that do? It always makes the richer rich and the poorer poorer. Mm-hmm. So these two things seem to butt up against each other. But let me just tell you that, spoiler, the solution does not lie in either of those things. It lies in going up above and beyond the double bind, and introducing and looking at the problem from a whole different point of view. And that's where we got to get creative and start using our imagination and stuff to solve some of these bigger problems that we are talking about this evening. Mm-hmm. But check him out.
Yeah,
let me know what you think.
Because I was thinking about that earlier about, if we just go after criminals, well, then at some point that's going to go horribly wrong, because then, everybody becomes puritanical and it just creates
exactly. You go after the criminals, and what do? You create a purity culture. You go, you ignore the criminals, and what do you get? A criminal culture. So, how do we do this, right? Like there are things we know. If you want to, I said this at the beginning of the pandemic. If you really want to know who understands social behavior in an epidemic, go talk to an epidemiologist. Mm-hmm. They're going to know more about how people are actually going to act in the face of a pandemic or a crisis of this kind than any number of social psychologists who have all their theories. These guys have studied history. They know exactly how people act. So it's not like we don't know anything. We do know a lot. But we keep butting up against, faddish ideas and theories and social sciences that are very young still and still figuring and finding their way, and ethical quandaries that we have clashing cultures and value sets and varying levels of extremism thrown in the mix, and you just get the human mess, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
It is.
But
that's
thank
really
you,
my
thank
point.
you for all the suggestions and everything. I know you're good to go because So, you know what? Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Good talking to you, and you guys take care. Bye.
Thanks, Nick.
Goodbye.
All right, bye, man. And God, I actually could have talked to him for another hour. I mean, there's a great call. Those are great points, and I wish we'd had more time to take up some others of those things, because he was bringing up some really good stuff. It was so heavy duty stuff.
I was gonna say, I think with the criminality thing is, not only are we awful to our kids and they turn into that, but when they do turn into that, we don't at least in the United States and in some countries, is we don't rehabilitate them the right way.
Correct.
So they just keep being criminals.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, look at Norway. Norway has something like we have something like a 40 or something recidivism rate for criminals, and they have like a 20% one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, those are the numbers, huh?
And they do it differently. They don't do this, oh, you're in prison, so it has to be the worst experience of your life.
Well, and if you're rehabilitating a person, then it can't be the worst experience of their life, right? It has to end, in a good place. So, it's just something to think about. We have another call in the queue, Christina, so I want to take this. Hello.
Hi, Chris and Melissa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Sorry to interrupt the last caller. I know you were interested in what he was saying, but
no, you're good.
I was just wondering, in terms of this topic, it seems to me like a lot of different leaders, cult leaders, or even some religions, it depends on, I guess, on your definition or the spectrum of, how you're thinking of it. It seems like they take basic morals that people agree with, like maybe that everyone is good or that we can all do something better with our lives, and completely manipulate them in such a way that it's so masterful that the people that get involved with it, it's hard for them to see that the leader or the religion doesn't itself embody that. And I just wonder, because you're so good at connecting things like Aleister Crowley to Hubbard and Hubbard to other cults and other religions, what it is you think he ethically and morally took and manipulated to people, even if they weren't his own ideas.
Oh, yeah, sure. No, I'll tell you a couple things right now. Let me know what you think here. I mean, one thing that Hubbard took was, I think it's called utilitarianism. I've had a few confusions about this, according to what other people have told me. I thought it was clear enough. But apparently utilitarianism, or this idea, this is like an 18th century or older ethical system, built on the idea of the greatest good or the most benefit to the most number of people would be an ethical or moral kind of decision-making process, right? And Hubbard took that and said that's going to be Scientology's ethics system, is going to be greatest, the ethics formula in Scientology to determine whether something's a good thing or a bad thing to do is what effect will it have, what consequences will this action have across the dynamics as Hubbard broke down life itself, right? Self, sex, family, groups, out to infinity, is the concept of these dynamics. So what are the consequences of you buying this house going to be on yourself, your family, your job, your extended family, the neighborhood? You start thinking along these lines. And the way it gets corrupted is that Scientology, the Church of Scientology, is one of the groups that you're part of. But it
Right.
becomes elevated to the most important group you're part of. And it becomes elevated to become even more important than your family, more important than you. Because it's the science of life itself. It's the one thing, L. Ron Hubbard wrote this. He wrote, Scientology is the one thing senior to life because it explains life itself. So
Yeah, and it seems like he also manipulates the locus of control to, anything good that happens to you is Scientology. Anything bad that happens to you, of course, is to your own doing, which, it seems like people like Manson or Jim Jones or even some, like Mormon churches or other quote unquote religions would do the same kind of thing where, if you have this great enlightenment or so to speak, or agreement with what they're saying, it's, it's because, you're getting it. But of course, if you mess up or fall out of line, it's because, you're a bad person or, you're, yeah.
But they can't introduce the bad stuff until they elevate the group to the senior position. It has to be the most important thing or one of the most important things in your life. Otherwise, once the abuse starts, you just walk away. You didn't care, right? I don't care about you. I don't care what you have to say, right? But if you've elevated the church and L. Ron Hubbard to the status of, demigod, then it's not so easy to walk away because now it's commitments and obligations and responsibilities and, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything, like my eternity, if I don't continue in Scientology. So, and every cult does this. Every one of them has some mechanism for this.
Absolutely.
It's easiest for me to talk about Scientology, but all of them have this.
And it makes me sad because, again, I commented earlier that it kind of, in my opinion, is one of the most abusive things you can do is take, people who are usually, just empathetic, kind, they want to do well and they're ethically sound. And what you just said, you make the number one ethic or moral Scientology or whatever it is when you had a person that, wanted to change the world and probably still wants to change the world. And just, I don't know.
They just get a twisted way of doing it, And if there's any rule that I was going to lay down that I would suggest as a universally applicable moral to follow or ethic to have, it would be to not ever let that happen, to not ever allow a group or an individual or a relationship to be the one thing that is more important than anything else in your life. You want a level playing field in most things. You don't want the edifice that you have to bow down to that is this group you're part of or this guru you follow. That's for the birds, man. Almost 100%. I can't think of times when that's a good idea. That's why I kind of suggested it as the most universal idea I could think of,
Yeah, but I got to tell you, as a really big fan, you and Melissa, the work that you do, that's exactly what you do for us listeners. And then we go and spread it to other people and we employ that very thought of, hey, maybe you should think twice about this or, I don't know. So thank you for all that you do and taking my call.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina. Great call.
Yeah.
Yep. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. I love doing this show. This is the most fun I have all week. I swear to God. Well, actually, I don't know if I can say that because I do have a lot of fun with you too.
Aw. I hope you have fun with me.
Okay, guys, we've had some great comments here. Let's see. Am I missing any super important calls? Because we're going to have to wrap up the show in a second. We've been getting some great comments here. Yeah, tree hugging for good. Yeah, there's Lots of very, very wild things. Let me suggest this to you guys. Just speaking out of the Gregory Bates and stuff and some of the stuff I was looking at. I want to suggest to you guys that perhaps our view of ethics and morals as being as something that exists only in our heads, individually, it's what we have as though we possess it like a car, might perhaps be a very challenging way to look at it. Because the nature of ethics and morals, and what I wanted to say as far as a thing for tonight on this subject, is ethics and morals are about your relationships. You don't live in a vacuum. And if you did live in a vacuum, then ethics and morals would be almost useless to you, because you'd be just you. There are relationships that you have with your environment, with others in your environment, right? And ethics and morals have to do with how you act towards them, how those relationships go. You contribute to that. You're part of that picture. You're not the only part of that picture. That's something to consider with this. And how you feel, what your opinions, your ideas, your attitudes about it, well, those are fine. Those are yours. But if you're considering ethics and morals in regards to relationships with others, then you're going to have to take into account where they're coming from too. And that's not just a matter of compassion and consideration or empathy and tolerance. It's a matter of understanding. Right? That's gained through communication, which of course is facilitated by compassion, tolerance, and empathy. So all these things are in the mix. They're all part of the picture of it. But I just want to suggest, as I throw out this idea to you guys, that maybe you rethink it from a different point of view, rather than the point of view of what are my ethics. It's how do my ideas of ethics or morals, or what is good and right and what is bad and evil, how do these ideas inform my relationships with others? And I think if you're concentrating on that part of it, you're in the right realm of thinking and therefore acting when it comes to ethics and morals. So let me just throw that idea out there. Okay, guys. Okay, so that all being said, let's wrap up with our fallacy of the week. I love this idea. I cannot remember the person who gave it to me, but hey, thanks, Troy. Thank you for that statement there, that nice comment. All right, choosing at random, opening it, there, okay. Ha! And on the heels of what I just talked about.
Self-serving bias.
There we go. Self-serving bias is the fallacy of the week. And this is actually a cognitive bias. So it's a filter, right? You're looking at things through self-serving. You believe your failures are due to external factors, yet you're personally responsible for your successes. Ha! In a way, I guess we could say the Church of Scientology lives on the self-serving bias as an entity, as an organization. Many of us enjoy unearned privileges, luck, and advantages that others don't.
Right.
It's easy to tell ourselves that we deserve these things whilst blaming circumstances when things don't go our way. And if you remember, I think from a week or two ago when I talked about the fundamental attribution error, that's what it leads to, is a self-serving bias. These two things, they feed each other. And it's fascinating how this stuff works in terms of, how these cognitive filters and crazy ideas of ours make the world just that much more difficult to live in. Okay, guys. Hey, thanks for your great comments. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for the callers who called in. You guys are awesome. We are wrapping up for this week. We will be back next week, and we'll let our hair down and talk about something else fun and exciting. Melissa's got some topics on the back burner, by the way.
Yeah, I'll get around to them eventually.
Yes, I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on her here to get those done, because I think you guys would love to hear from her on some of this stuff too, and she's got some amazing topics that we're going to be discussing that she'll be taking lead on. So that'll be fun.
All right.
Okay, so that all being said, let's see you guys next week, and let's wrap up.
All right.